Game number 5, a VOD review between C9 and TSM. Let's find out how it all got to this. We've already reviewed the first 4 games, but a bit of a refresher, especially for people who might just be joining the VOD for game number 5. We start off with C9 on red side, TSM on blue side. C9 have side selection game 1, 3, and 5. Everyone chose red side so far, but interestingly, that was not true of TSM, of C9 in game 5. So we'll get to that soon, but you'll notice C9, 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 but then things stay the same. So what did we learn through the first 5 games? Well, part of that, you could go back and watch the VODs, but for a brief reminder, a refresher for people who are still here 7 hours into the stream. Game 1 was the Sonataric game. Ended up being pretty easily closer on there because Svenskaren's Hecarim was really on point in the jungle. Now, game number 2, from C9 perspective, this is one where TSM had a pretty... it was very difficult for them to actually try to carry this game, and I think it was in the end a well-deserved victory for C9, where TSM just fell a bit far behind and C9 was able to close it. It's sort of draft where in the mid-game you can kind of end the game pretty liberally in a draft like C9's, whereas TSM just weren't able to. And this was also a game that it felt like TSM's mistakes in this game, specifically around Rift Herald and topside play when they had the cannon just free pushing in GP, were the sort of things that would just explain away a 3-0 loss. But then TSM came in strong. Game number 3, of course, with the really big Akali flanks. And the shift from going for, if you notice TSM's mid laners, they've gone from Jace mid lane and Corki mid lane, AD mid laners who can push and poke, but can't really take a game by the scruff of the neck and hard carry it. The change was made for the Akali and, of course, Bjergsen's flanks. And honestly, he probably has the best 2 teleport flanks of any player in 2019, where his TP flank on Zillion at the end of the season against TL, but also his TP flank on Akali in this game. And then we just reviewed game number 4, where C9 kind of banned themselves into a corner where they had to take Ryze Zed with all other flex lane matchups taken, not wanting to get heavily counterpicked, and kind of didn't really find much value out of their bans, and the Zed pick fell behind and it kind of fell apart. So that's where we're at. Notable thing about game number 5, as we load in full screen, is that C9 have chosen blue side. First team this series to do so, which is already conspicuous. Already as TSM, you're like, but they just messed up on blue side. Why would they do this again? Notice, once again, they ban Lissandra, Akali, Aurelia. So this feels like the live or replay moment for the side of C9, given that their second round really got them into an awkward spot where they didn't really have solo lanes to pick. So you already think they're going to be picking a solo laner much earlier in the draft here at C9. So the bans don't change from a TSM perspective. The Rek'Sai first pick, we do see this time. Okay, so the decision is made. Drop Jarvan, take Rek'Sai. I think this is a good start because I think Rek'Sai offers the damage that the Jarvan wasn't able to complete in game number 1. And it also gives them a different option from Cinderhulk Jarvan, and it's just a bit of a reset for Svenskeren. So I like the Rek'Sai here as a first pick over Jarvan and the other choices they were making. Again, in the LCK, I would expect Rek'Sai or Kalista or Ryze. We don't see that there. And here's TSM. Okay, so the Kindred lock-in. Let's think about the history of Kindred this series. Remember back into game number 1 when TSM was on blue side, they actually banned Kindred. I think that's because they anticipated early picking a Rek'Sai and then, or even just Gragas, but largely I think they were anticipating early Rek'Sai, and Kindred's a really strong answer into Rek'Sai. So Kindred was banned by TSM in game number 1 and game number 2 and game number 3. Now, it was dropped for game number 4. They had to drop a ban, and we talked about how the Kindred was the one that made the most sense to drop as a ban. But now, moving into game number 5, TSM don't ban Kindred, but they first round lock it. So This is a winning jungle matchup, and it means the first pick Rek'Sai, just like the Jarvan wasn't getting a lot done, doesn't get a lot done for C9 here either. So I'm really liking that from TSM. And you just assume they're going to pick Zilean with it, because this is a duo that TSM has won on recently. Like, you already have to assume Zilean's coming out at Bjergsen's pick. They're able to power pick Braum, which answers a lot of champions, and it shows nothing about their draft. Can take Galio in this spot, but Braum lines up to some of the lanes into Zilean a little bit cleaner. And this time we get a Zilean lane we like. Wasn't a fan of the Zilean Jarvan that we had in game number 3 from a C9 perspective, but I actually think that Zilean Kindred is a super strong lane, so surely you just take Zilean at this pick. Can't be surprised by that. Yeah, okay. Of course it's Zilean. The moment you see first round Kindred, you're definitely seeing Zilean at Bjergsen's pick. But C9 was aware of that. So the end result is C9 have pretty good engage. A skirmishing jungler that usually has a big lead, but not over Kindred. And that's important. So TSM got the jungle counter pick. They got a duo that can turret dive very reliably. Now C9's pretty scared to run something like Gangplank top. They're pretty scared to run the scaling options in top lane they were picking before. Because now the worry is that Zilean and Kindred just increase the pace of the game and roam through there. So I think some of Licorice's champion pool now, again, gets a little bit further narrowed. And they were having some struggle before. And TSM has now picked the C9 special. Actually, when I was talking about that on stream, people were like, what the hell is he talking about? TSM's the one that runs Zilean Kindred. I'm like, no, that's the C9 special. In 2018, come on, blabber. But this year, they've more recently run this Kindred Zilean duo. So we get into the second round. TSM need to pick, at this point, 80 carry and also top lane. Makes a lot of sense to hold on to their top lane pick for Broken Blade and get another counter pick. And they can get the Ezreal just to opt out. So the pick your poison that C9's going through, I think you ban Kayle, because otherwise C9's draft sucks. Kayle hard counters Zoe, Rek'Sai, Alistar draft, so you have to ban the Kayle. The Kennen ban to me from C9 is a bit... I understand why they've banned this champion. It's a strong blind pick. It can have some backline threat. It's another zone to go along with the Lambs or Spy and potentially the Chrono Shift with the double bomb. But I think the Ezreal is the kind of simpler, like a more likely pick to be taken and just picked for Sven, because it also allows for a lot of safety, and TSM don't want to play bot side. They want to play top side most likely with the Kindred, just to take advantage of a skill matchup. So you really think that TSM are going to last pick a counter pick for Broken Blade and then turret dive it with Kindred Zilean. So I actually feel like you ban Ezreal at this spot, and if you see the cannon lock in, you're just like, okay. It's much harder for the Kindred Zilean to work, I think, in a 3v2 than it is in a 2v1. So, or I guess, yeah, I feel like the bigger your outnumber, Killian's injured, Kindred Zilean just go top lane really, really reliably, and I think they're a little bit less reliable when there's more members, but I guess 4v3 is how it's likely going to go. So let's just start this again. So I would much have preferred the Ezreal ban from C9's spot. I think it gets more done. Now you can just take Sivir Alistar and try to scale through it. And 5v5, okay, we got a real beefy 5v5 draft here. So that's how C9 are able to rewrite it, is they say, all right, we're going to win 5v5s. And you look at C9 and you're like, yeah, it's probably true. I mean, Ricochet value against TSM's squishy comp is massive. And you probably have to pick a carry final pick here as Broken Blade. What do you take? Now, a lot of people in chat probably already know the answer to this, but I'm interested here. I don't know what Broken Blade plays in this game. So, Sandra, Aurelia, Akali, all gone. Now, Jace, you can take in this comp, but you can largely, like, this is the lane that has brought um, the Ornn back into relevance, is the fact that Ornn has been doing well into Jace in the LCK. Now, because it would be Jace, Kindred, Zilean, I don't think that's the same as just Jace, because Kindred, Zilean, turret dive, and Ornn so well. But when you think about the carry pool available, there's Jace. That's available. I don't think Ryze does enough damage. But at least the root would be a nice way to start up things. It would. I don't know about Ryze here either. You could take something like an unhit Nico here and do really well. But then you just have another champion that gets punked in the 5v5. How much do you err into crushing the Ornn? I mean, I guess you could just take Cho'Gath and Kindred Zilean dive and be fine. But does it change the 5v5? It's someone that can catch trouble bubbles and doesn't die instantly to a ricochet. I'm really interested to see what they choose here. Hecarim has good threat onto specifically Zoe, but it's so likely to get just ping-ponged around that I think Hecarim is... I think Hecarim's okay without being fantastic. Vlad? It's not the easiest team to... I mean, there's no, to me, goal like god tier choice here for TSM. What do you choose here? All right, they go with the Vladimir in the end. The Vladimir makes it really interesting, but it's a pretty tricky draft to execute after early game. Mainly because Lamb's Respite and also Hemoplague, like all the damage amps and invulnerabilities and all those sort of things. In a balanced 5v5, it's so hard to have everything on point and to get value out of Lamb's Respite, especially. Like, it's so squishy on TSM's side. Really, really squishy. But to me, this is all about Bjergsen and Arcadian, how much work they can get done taking over early and mid game. Like, that to me is the really, really big thing here that comes through. C9 has 5v5 comp, but their main engage in Ornn is hard countered by Braum. Thoughts? Really good point. You know, something that I would get to when the champions were all out there on the map. Yes, the Ornn Horn is cleanly answered by Braum, but Sivir ult and also the fact that they can poke... you're not always going to have on command hold the door, but, you know, that's what you're saving it for where possible against the Ornn. But Sivir ult also is another hard engage tool. Like, it's very hard to deny fights from C9 if they're not way behind. Like, they've got enough, even with the one-to-one answer there, that things can come through and take them out. And Sivir Alistar also, like, it's not... Alistar's not normally primary engage, but if you add a Sivir there, or if there's an Ori Bowl, like, there's ways to make Alistar engage. So I think they have enough engage with Rek'Sai in a single target, Alistar coming in, Licorice ult. Like, I think there's enough engage on this comp that it's... You look at it and you're like, the Ricochet at 3-item Sivir, like, it's insanely chunking Sven, Bjergsen, and Arcadian. Like, Sivir really, really is in a huge spot to do well as this game goes on. But in the earlier games, Licorice applies no pressure to a Vladimir at all. There can be no chance stuns in the matchup because you have Pull, and Zilean and Kindred can just take over this game and make Rek'Sai useless. And if Rek'Sai falls behind early, the chances of Rek'Sai being valuable in the mid to late game, you know, with half a Black Cleaver and a Warrior in chat, is very minimal. So I think a lot of this is on the Zilean and Kindred use. 14 and 4 Zilean. Well, Bjergsen Zilean, underrated as a pick, clearly. In terms of the jungle starts, Kindred solo starting red to allow Braum and Ezreal to enter lane. See what it means for Scuttle Crabs as well. Not often are you going to see Kindred trying to look for what feels like a defensive start here. Usually you want a leash so you can go for a double Scuttle or something like that, but It seems that they're valuing Ezreal and Braum having access to the minion wave first, and that does mean that Ezreal will get lane control for longer. Ezreal, if he gets to lane first, can actually have lane control in a lot of lanes. His level 1 is very, very powerful, so I guess I just want to take advantage of the level 1 and get priority there. But the Scuttle's bot side, so it's going to be a lot slower to path there, as we can see. And Rek'Sai does the Krug clear of 3 camp red side faster than Kindred is able to do so. Bot lane control, is bot Scuttle free? I think yes and no is my answer to that question. They have the level 2 advantage, but it ends up being mirrored. Their vision is a little bit more shallow, is C9's, so it ends up being that way. So obviously they don't know which side the Scuttle's going to spawn on. I think overall that ends up being advantage TSM and getting the first Scuttle spawn, which can be so important in the snowball. But, you know, it's not an exact science. It's not a precise science on the jungle start there. The only noticeable advantage is it gives Ven and Smoothie more lane control earlier in the lane phase than you would expect. And already now we're at to the part where we're pushing in. So super uninteractive top side. Not even like a 6 minutes in Ignite window, I think, for Licorice Death solo kill potential in this lane. The Kindred Zillion duo is the most interesting part of the game when it comes to aggressors. As Svenskeren, you don't want to gank Vladimir, you don't want to gank Zillion particularly. It's a pretty ungankable game for Svenskeren, so you feel pretty tilted that you ended up with a skirmishing disadvantage and lanes you can't gank as Rek'Sai. Like, this definitely feels like the game where Rek'Sai could be Sejuani and the game would go the same way. Which you never want to hear as a Rek'Sai player. Do you think on blind top into Braum is a bad choice compared to any other tank you could take top? I think for what they wanted to do, because remember the draft was Sivir Braum, so Sivir Ornn, it's not, because they wanted to give their draft an identity in the second round to make it possible to do something, and Sivir Ornn is really strong against Kindred, obviously if there's no Braum involved, but Ornn is also one of the more sustainable laners that doesn't get as dominated badly by ganks. If Kindred ganks Ornn, the lane's not over, but if Kindred ganks some other top lane tanks in, you know, what you knew was always going to be some level of bad matchup, given that TSM had counterpick, the fact that you can buy items out of base lets you hedge out kind of some CS from a wave that you otherwise been denied, or some certain times where you have solo kill potential as a tank against a carry, purely because of subverting back timers. So given that Ornn Sivir makes the teamfight comp, yes, it's not ideal case of being able to really pick your poison and be able to get the full value out of the Ornn Horn, but I think it also helps your scaling, right? You also get the 6,000 gold of Ornn items from all of this, so I think it's one of those things where if you try to suggest to me another tank you could replace it with that would also reliably initiate and have a strong laning phase, the only other one that can do some of that is Cho'Gath, but he can't initiate. And I think if you go Cho'Gath, there are lane counters that work as well. So it's... Cho is the only other champion that I think ticks some of the boxes. I think Poppy would be one to consider. They could have gone Poppy Sivir in this case, but I actually think Ornn is fine, and it helps with the scaling as well. A lot of battles bot side. So Kindred's going for a snowball build here, going for the Blood Razor first. Bit surprised by that. I would have assumed Warrior Enchant in this game, actually, because Warrior Enchant's better at damaging champions. The Blood Razor is better for, like, killing neutrals. A little bit surprising to see that one. No pressure on Vladimir, so definitely Vladimir's happy that Cho'Gath wasn't the top lane tanker choice in this game. Can be a rough matchup there. I think Mundo can make a comeback into the patch meta this patch. By this patch, do you mean this competitive patch, 8.6, which we're seeing on our screens? No. 8.7, yes. Mundo is very strong on the current live patch. I think Poppy can be really good. You know, I mentioned it already here. I think Poppy's laning phase, some matchups into Poppy are really, really strong, and other ones she's really strong against. I think she has more polarizing matchups than Ornn, who can kind of get away with being Kindred ganked better than any champion in the top lane pool. But I think there's definitely an argument that Poppy should have been selected here, yeah. John Feast asked about, can we assume that C9 is tilted? I mean, Game 4, they took a really chance draft that didn't come off. I think after Game 3, they would have been frustrated for sure because it felt like they kind of almost turned something into nothing. My experience being around the C9 players is they largely have very strong mental. The squad is really good at building that. But yeah, I mean, there's always a chance, right? Especially if things don't go your way in the early game. I would not think they entered Game 5 tilted, but seeing how this game is going. So early Rift Herald here. Really, really early Rift Herald. Off spawn, basically. You don't often see Rift Herald started off spawn. It happens from time to time, but not that often. Especially around the Vladimir lane, but by the time Arcadian got eyes on it, it was down to 3,000. There's nowhere to fight for it. So this was just very, very assertive play from Svenska. If you can't gank any lanes, gank the jungle monsters as fast as possible, right? So really nicely done by him. It means they can get more gold into certain matchups. I assume top lane. Yeah, just trying to decrease the amount of time, increase the amount of time before the Vladimir's team fight ready. A lot of members invested mid lane here. We were waiting for Kindred to make a side lane play, but it never actually happens in the early game. Blood Rays are done. Diving under turrets because they have the Zillion ulti, but I don't know what happened there. I guess some game mechanic. Anyone sure what caused this pause? Audio issue. Wow, that's awkward. Good news! We get to skip 16 minutes of this VOD. Boom. This is really nicely played by C9. You know, they take down the Rift Herald off spawn. They go top side. They jam it in. Suddenly, Ornn is going to have mid-game items nice and early. Vladimir misses out on CS. Yes, he's competitive in CS with the Ornn, but Vladimir has an expensive build, and Ornn has whatever he's getting as a decent build. And there's always 400 CS, Ornn, Alistair, Sivir team fights here that could actually be a win condition for C9. Again, for TSM, we're evaluating how much they can make done of just how strong their roaming opportunities are and their skirmishing opportunities. This would be a skirmish. Should we watch this team fight? So C9 leashed the Drake, and TSM could give it up. But they decide they want a team fight, which to some degree is risky. You know, like Vladimir is going to be there late. C9 have Ornn already grouped, and TSM's team fight isn't their strong suit. They don't have level 11 on Vladimir. They don't have item completions on most of their carries. And TSM choose to fight it anyway. So Zeyzal really good at pulling the trigger here. And they can't burst down the Kindred before Lamb's Respite goes down. So a lot of Lamb's Respite value here. Like pretty immense Lamb's Respite value. And Zilean can choose their target. Broken Blade gets in the back line. And TSM is teamfighting this super well if they have items. But I think at this item breakpoint, they actually are much less strong than they think they are. What a play on the bot side, by the way. I was watching topside, but watch this play here from Zeyzal. He gets a second two-man headbutt pulverize, and they just get huge value out of that. That's awesome play on the bot side for the 3 kills they're getting. They were so clean before then. What a play. Like C9, team fight here. Licorice flashing over just to be in position for this re-engage. That's really nicely done by Zeyzal. He got a really nice flash headbutt pulverize, and then another good headbutt pulverize. But this is a very avoidable team fight for TSM. I feel like their Drake Lust that cost them game number 2 is kind of rearing its ugly head again in that play, because they really, really want to force a fight, and yet their items don't show that they're ready to force said fight. This was an all bark, no bite moment for me, because it's a late teleport, and yes, it goes kind of better than expected because the Lamb's spike an arm and the Zilean ult is fine, but I think more often than not they lose that play, so it's another fighting for Drake moment, I think, from TSM, but at least they're keeping to their guns, they're running straight back at it, but now it's without Lamb's Respite, and Lamb's Respite is a more important ult than any of C9's ults, so very hard for them to have any lane presence, or even teamfight presence in a scenario like that. It's a good call from C9 just to roll through mid lane here. They're calling TSM's bluffs, and they're doing it well. A lot of turret plate advantage. 6 turret plates, right? Most of them taken in top side. That was 5 of them, but it's part of the gold that's been picked up here. C9 take the Mountain Drake. Again, C9 could have just had the Mountain Drake earlier, and TSM could have tried to find, say, an answering turret on the other side of the map, but instead we watched all of this play happen from a Drake that ended up going to C9 anyway, so kind of a bit curious decision-making by TSM. Also really don't know why Blood Razor. I think Warrior Enchant, the way it was always explained to me is that Warrior Enchant for battling, burst trades, so shorter trades against, say, an opponent jungler, and obviously the CDR is really nice for the ultimate, and Blood Razor if you're just running at objectives, but kind of amazing that Cloud9's picked up both the Drake and also the Rift Herald against Rek'Sai. So against, Rek'Sai. As Kindred against Rek'Sai. Like, this is a really good jungling matchup for TSM, but even with their ability to leave mid lane and the Blood Razor really meaning really fast neutrals, Rek'Sai's been impressive. Game where she couldn't gank anyone, she was able to actually get a lot of advantages. So shout out to Svenskaren again. He's had a very strong series overall. I think if Arcadian went Warrior instead of Blood Razor, would that fight have gone better for TSM? I don't think that particular fight would necessarily have changed that much, but I think Warrior in general is the stronger choice. Warrior Rapid Fire Cannon IE is a pretty common build. The problem when you go for Blood Razor is, what is your second item? It kind of has to be Black Cleaver, which is okay on this team comp, but not outstanding. Because if you go Blood Razor, you need AD from somewhere, but you want a Zeal item. Like Rapid Fire Cannon's so good on Kindred. Like, you get in a really weird item spot when you go Blood Razor, unless you're really hard snowballing. So I think you have to go Blood Razor. Yeah, I think you have to go Blood Razor, Black Cleaver, and I think Warrior Enchant. You have many more different second items that can be interesting. You already have a lot of magic damage on your team, so yeah, hard to say. I see not even take the mid lane turret. Like, this is another point where you look at the mini map and you tell me that the Zilean Kindred comp lost mid priority this hard, and mid lane turret went down first. TSM have no turrets. And you look at C9 and say, damn, like, Sivir should rock this team. Again, I'm there with C9 3-2, man. I'm definitely feeling C9 at this point in the game. Where does it go wrong? TSM is fighting, and with everything working out for them, they're still trading down. There's been some really high value, like, you know, slow this down, right? The Zillion ult's thrown out pretty early. It's pretty big for them to blow up Zazel, but like Vlad is out of this fight the entire time. Like, Varus has TP wards, but he can't just TP into the backline here. I don't think it really works. Then he has to late teleport onto a minion, which is... I mean, the minion was the right place to teleport. Like, at least it takes away an exit plan for C9. But even through all of this, they still trade down. Nicely done by Niski. Boom. This is such a stressful game for both teams. Wait, what happened here? This is just running at Licorice and Arcadia and getting on the map fast, which is something that Kindred can do. They have the teleport as well. It's just a pick. On some of us teleport, but it's as Cloud Drake spawns. Okay, just a Cloud Drake taken by TSM and defended on the top side. So item points, breakpoints are always important in Sivir comps. 2 items done. Sivir has a lot of threat onto TSM, more so than you might imagine for a normal Sivir scaling comp, purely because TSM has a very squishy comp. There's like, when it comes to armor, there's a Seeker's Arm Guard, Iceborne Gauntlet, and then Ninja Tabi, one of them. So IE is the real big swing point in this game. Zoe herself is doing very, very well, and that's kind of an issue here. The Kindred has Black Cleaver, so it's actually nice that Kindred picked up the kills, because at least with Black Cleaver you can do some things in terms of having an identity in fights. But I feel like C9 should have easier access to face checking, because they have a tankier lineup. Alistair, Orin, Rek'Sai, they can all walk up and contest vision, and it's much harder for TSM to do the same thing. Flash over from Broken Blade with no ult is bold, but they were 5v4, so it's probably fine. Like, C9 want to make this game about Baron. That's the easiest way for them to find a meaningful lead, is they have Orin from behind the pit, and yes, there is the Unbreakable to answer that, but they have Sivir, they have Trouble Bubble, they have Alistair also, who can potentially wait in a flank spot, so... When you have an Orin who can tank Baron basically forever, you're feeling pretty good about that. The gold lead here is actually 4,000 because Orin has 2,000 more gold of Orin items. Alright, well this one definitely needs to be replayed. This seems like a throw. So the map control's good, so they're trying to slow the stinky chunks out Broken Blade. Alistair's going to push in wards, and they're trying to start this Baron play we were talking about. So how does it fall apart? Let's look at the game state here. Flashes are down on multiple members of TSM and C9, specifically Niski. This is just smoothie fucking beast moding. Holy crap. Like, people are saying Niski is caught. It's not like Niski was in like a awful position. He just got wombo slammed by Smoothie. Really nicely played by Smoothie there. Because, like, think about how this play starts, right? Niski's poking. Sivir, sneaky, pings that he's going to continue pushing because he just chunked out Broken Blade. Alistair's checking for vision top side, right? And then Smoothie just says, I think I can get him. Like, it's not like any... Like, Sven and Arcadian are not in position to profit from this until Smoothie all in super hard. Opens with the Unbreakable just to guarantee the pick. And then from downtown, they take him down. That's a really nice pick from TSM. Knowing Smoothie, having worked with him before, that was definitely Smoothie saying, I can get him. Like, we saw Joker make so many plays like that in Sandbox vs SKT and just miss the ult or miss the execution. Smoothie just beast moded it. Really nicely done. Yeah, minion hop into Q, into R. I've told the story before on stream, but Jack asked me to choose between or give a recommendation between Bunny Fufu and Smoothie back when Smoothie was first being tried out for C9 before he, just after he left Team Liquid. And I was really impressed with Smoothie's ability to assertively make calls and communicate. And there's been question marks about if he over communicates, but he brings stuff like that onto him and makes big plays. And we talked about how Bjergsen was the only one who could do that in game number 3. That's Smoothie doing one in game number 5. Really well played by him. He made something out of nothing. The best players can do that. Now, that doesn't mean that C9's undone in terms of where this game is at. Sivir's on a back timing, so they need to like give up. But this can just be a vision exhaustion game where TSM have to use a lot of tools to contest vision around the Baron, and then you just wait for your moment and go in. But it is going to be a bit of a to and fro around Baron. Like, Baron, to me, is the big thing C9 need to win this game, because with Baron, they can just barrel down a lane, and Sivir suddenly can walk up for autos, and things work out from there. TSM have a lot of control wards, so they're actually at no danger of being exhausted from vision. What Drake is spawning? Infernal, okay. Oh, I paused at an opportune time. Only a 2-for-1. This is an interesting fight. Let's watch it again. So Zeyzal again. This looks bold, but the fact that he's able to get both Bjergsen and also Sven is pretty huge on this fight. So as the fight plays, we'll do it slow. Like, Smoothie dies instantly. Doesn't matter whatever value you're getting out of your R. Sneaky tries to chase in and kill backline, which, in hindsight, he didn't completely know where the Vladimir is. Bjergsen managed to get space, and Bjergsen, Arcadian, and also Sven get to kite up, which is the reason why the backline never goes down. But it's just a fight for on multiple different fronts here. Sneaky finally, by the end, gets space, just like Ezreal was able to post-revive, but this is the easy of access team fight that we were talking about. But it's one of those team fight wins where your health bars are so low that there's no free objective for you to get outside of, in this case, just soloing down Infernal. Like, it doesn't feel great to give up Infernal, but you don't lose a lot of Baron positioning on this, and C9 has to recall. Yeah, Smoothie comes in and just ends up out of position here, so another really high value Lamb's Respite, I'm going to say. I think TSM, you know, it's no surprise they played this comp multiple times this season, but they're able to fight around the Lamb's Respite better than I usually give most teams credit for. They're doing well on that. Svenskaren got red. All about Baron now. How do we get Baron C9 is the question they need to be asking about. You don't care about the Mountain Drake spawning. Yes, it'd be lovely to have one, but C9 don't play two sides of the map well. They play one side of the map well. Any Orin comp wants to play around one objective and make the whole game about that objective, and Baron is that objective. So, yep, they're doing the correct thing. Start the Baron. Your Baron turn is strong. Now, Baron speed for C9 is obviously nothing special. Sivir does good Baron speed, but no one else on the team can contribute to that. So you end up losing mid lane turret from all of this because Ornn goes bot lane. Ornn probably could have stayed and they could have gotten more out of that, but they decide just to fall back. The item timing here is still not ideal. They so desperately need IE. I think it's available now, so IE is a pretty nice spike onto C9. And then you're always wanting to pause at this point and see, okay, who has the control ward lead and how many control wards does the enemy team have if they go to contest vision? And right now, C9 have a control ward lead, and they also have basically the same amount of control wards in their inventory. TPN from Sivir. Sivir's super strong. Need more wards on your flanks here. I feel like they're very unlikely to have eyes on Vladimir, so any eyes they can get on him coming into a fight can be important. So it's basically just the standard push in and contest Baron vision. C9 have top lane outer turret still up, so that's pretty big in this Baron play. Oh, Zeyzal goes too far. Zeyzal, who had that awesome... We saw Smoothie with the awesome flank on Alistar in the previous game, number 3. Zeyzal walks in. Watch the teammates here as this play happens. So Niski is going to return to his position over the wall. Sneaky hasn't pressed ult yet. And Zeyzal's alone. And just gets a WQ onto Vlad only. And he really, really stuffs them there. They lose the whole health bar on Zeyzal and Sneaky from that one play. He doesn't have flash. He wants to headbutt pulverize Arcadian, I guess. But he ends up with nobody. That really, really sucks. And you can tell C9 weren't ready for this. Mostly because 2 people die, including Sneaky, and they never even used the Ornn ultimate. This no doubt was a I can do this, and no one else makes a clear call. When is Unbreakable used? It's possible that it was just never used. It's used towards the end of it, so there's no point using Ornn ult anymore. Split call from C9. Zeyzal saw a fight that he could go into, but no one was looking to work on it. No one was looking to capitalize off it. That's a really big mistake. And that's the sort of thing where if you have a 5v5 comp, but you don't all press your 5v5 buttons, like, you know, Sivir ult was used late, Ornn ult wasn't used at all. Yeah, it's one of those things. But if Ornn ult isn't thrown out and Zeyzal gave up his whole health bar, there was a split call. You never have a agreed on call where Ornn ult is not used as Zeyzal looks for a flank. That just doesn't happen, right? Like that's... People say that's mental boom, but to me that's almost a mental exhaustion play because, you know, we're 5 games in with pauses into this series and Zeyzal sees a grouped up enemy team and he pulls the trigger. And if the call is I can initiate, you need a counter call fast of no don't or some other informed play, but Zeyzal goes straight in and straight up dies, and Sneaky just dies on the back end of it. So you just never have Alistar go in there if Ornn isn't going in. That's a really big cost because C9's 5v5 was the strong part of their comp, and they got by far the ass end of the trade, I guess you would say, on that one. Because now TSM have Baron, and TSM with Baron are really powerful. Alright, how did this one start? So Zazel's seen on a ward, I think. Yeah, Zazel's seen on a ward, then flashes over for this. This is a flash over, and I was just working out how Alistair got into the backline here. Yeah, just really, really disconnected. Now, Broken Blade's, again, going for a short-range teleport, which is really funny. But this is a Vladimir's out of position, I can engage play, and it's 5v4. But the problem is that the follow-up is nowhere near. Sneaky can't do any damage. The Orinol is never going to work. The TP from Broken Blade is hilarious. But, you know, it doesn't matter because Alistair engaging 5v4 when no one can capitalize. Like, Niski was once again... You know, like, you look at this play, like how can anyone do damage here? Like, think about the best case scenario from this play, and you see, like, look at where the damage is, right? Niski's towards the left of the screen, comes in. There's no realistic paddle star he's gonna hit. Sneaky, oh, it's so awkward, but Sneaky doesn't have vision of that brush, and while the dying Alistair gives them vision, they don't get anything there either. Another 5v4. It's not the way you assume that a Zillion Kindred game is going to play out. Usually it's about the tempo of early game, and C9 kind of pivoted to teamfight, but teamfight executions have been botched twice. And it's really costing them in this game. And that was after some really good engages earlier in the game. Interesting. Losing 2 inhibitors obviously is the first sign of a lost game. But items-wise, the lead is felt. Like, Ezreal has like a Mercurial Scimitar advantage over his opponent. But never have we seen Niski and Sivir, you know, Zoe and Sivir both do damage in a team fight. Upgraded IE done. I think it was Black Cleaver upgraded before. I'm not sure if that was a proximity thing, but the IE was the last upgrade. Now, that means that the gold lead is much less meaningful because they have Infernal Drake and Ornn items. But also, TSM easily get access to 3 lanes, and C9 can't keep them honest and keep them in 1 because it's double inhibitor down and soon to be Elder and Baron spawning. Like, C9 wanted to make this game about predictable fights where Sivir could do damage, but Sivir was actually zoned from damage for the majority of this game. That's a good headbutt pulverize that time. It's a good engage. Oh, the Licorice got interrupted. Got knocked up. It's actually pretty big. The knock up happened there, but not that big because there was no damage behind it. Like, again, you need to always keep your eyes on where is Sneaky and who can he auto. Like, watch this fight and think about it all coming through in a big way. Imagine no interrupt here and watch Niski and Sneaky. Like, Sneaky's hitting Broken Blade. He instantly has to turn on to someone who's unkillable. And even if the backline Orinhorn had gone in, actually it doesn't do anything because there's no damage behind it. Alistair Ornn just not getting anything done in these fights. They're chasing so hard to do damage that they're chasing Zoe and Sivir out of damage. Well played by Broken Blade. If you watch Broken Blade on the bottom here, he opens up for it. And while he's not going to be able to get any kills, the moment that he hemoplagues onto Sneaky and Nisqy, he's able to control the positioning of 2 carries, and they only have 2 carries. It's 2 threat comps. So Broken Blade actually is the one that salvages this team fight. That could have been a really big one for C9. But, I mean, a lot of it's because of where they're fighting on the map as well. Such as Vladimir things in the late game. I see now running an Elder is the correct move here. It's the only way they can force TSM to fight in a spot rather than just play multiple lanes. So you like how they approach this? This is a cool fight. So the first thing of should you start the Elder here, the answer is definitely yes, because it forces TSM to walk up on you rather than playing 3 lanes and winning, and you get something approximating a 5v5 fight. For once, they actually separate the Braum from the rest of TSM. How did that happen? Smoothie kites upwards, and as he does that on a ward, Braum for once is not in position to answer, so they get a huge Ornhorn, and only Broken Blade ulting can actually stop things on the bottom side. Still, we know that he dies. The amount of time that Svenskeren lives this fight is insane, because as he comes out of the bomb, he instantly ults onto Arcadian, and of course lives through much longer than you would expect. He's 1v4ing because of the Lamb's Respite. This was a pretty tantalizing fight. I could end up going 1-for-1 at the start, but damn if it wasn't close. And C9 get a buff that in any other way would have gone for free to TSM. They're going to lose Baron anyway, but to even halve and get one of the objectives there as C9 is for sure the right shot call. Yeah, the teleport on Sivir, like Kobe's saying, actually spares them some respite. Obviously, they can't stop the Baron, right? It's a freebie Baron. They can't do anything about that. So 3 inhibs up. TSM playing 1 lane. Nice chunk onto Broken Blade. So Sneaky's hitting the minion wave here, trying to lifesteal as Zazo goes into the fight. It's so tricky to do damage because he's respecting Hemoplague and other things going on here. Really well kited out by TSM. They could just never have a fight where Sneaky could fight with the rest of the carries. Well done by TSM. It can be really tricky to pull off these comps, but they did it really, really well. And Arcadian's Kindred was really on point in a lot of these fights. This is a hard game to win, game number 5, and obviously a huge reverse sweep to come back from TSM. Big win for TSM. Really interesting series. I don't think either team comes away super clean victories, even in their wins. I think specifically TSM, it would be so interesting to watch their game 1 against Team Liquid, like obviously they're going to ban, Sono or Tarek, probably the Tarek, right, to try to slow things down. I think this game number 3, a lot of it was about just superior execution in the mid to late game rather than kind of following in on paper win conditions in the early game. Don't you think that C9 gives a serious... But I think C9 made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. But I actually think that, TSM could have gone on a different path in game number 2 with the Rift Herald play. And then it was a lot of TSM's wrong approach to game number 2, especially, that kind of accelerate their own demise. I think C9 made some pretty significant mistakes this series as well, but I wouldn't say like C9 had it and threw it. I think both teams made some pretty critical errors, but at the end of the day, TSM was able to actually kind of outplay in the clutch and also, have to come back from 2-0 down. Like, I think it's very impressive how much they were able to call out. The point here about Broken Blade and Licorice, I think, were felt. Like, I think Broken Blade had a much better series than Licorice in this best of 5, and I come in as a huge Licorice fan. But I think Broken Blade showed much smarter fundamentals than when I had seen him in previous games, where he kind of made a couple of mistaken calls. I think they got a lot out of the support and small matchup as well. I think Smoothie had a really good series. And Zazel was a little bit haphazard, especially in the final game. But I think Broken Blade was super good in this series. I think MVP voting, I'd probably have... Games 1 and 2, like Svenskeren, I think was definitely the MVP from C9's side. By the end, obviously, he wasn't able to do much in the finals game. I think it's between Broken Blade and Bjergsen. I think Bjergsen makes the huge play in game number 2, in game number 3, that gets them back in. But I think Broken Blade was really, really good in this series. Like, he was definitely the better top laner, without a shadow of a doubt, in this best of 5. It's going to be something for him to build upon. I don't know how reliably he can play a series that well, but I think Broken Blade was awesome in this best of 5. There were just so few errors where I looked at Broken Blade and be you're an aggressive player who just doesn't know how to play the map or play with your team. Like, he felt in sync with TSM this series, which is good to see. Some of the teleports in the last game were wonky, but they had a really wonky 5v5 fight, so it's very hard to know when the right time for Vladimir to end up in the backline was. Sven was clean. I think Sven is always super clean. He had those critical errors. I think Sven probably got in his own head a bit in 2018 because he had those very obvious what the hell is Sven doing moments. But I think in 2019 he's gone back to being AD carry royalty, which is good to see from him. TSM versus TL prediction. I think TL looked better against FlyQuest than I expected, and I think that TSM, I came in with really high expectations and they weren't really met by the overall level of play in this best of 5. So I think if I do the math there, I say that TL should have some degree of favoritism over TSM, which is not what I expected before I reviewed this series. I think if TSM play like they did on this series, then they lose to TL for sure. I don't know what that means for predictions, though, for the best of 5. I probably have TL marginal favorites, but I wouldn't be able to suggest a score. Looking at some other questions. Deathless Bjerg, yeah, 3 games in a row. Deathless. Bjergsen was really good this series, but I think the Zillion games are much harder to express skill on, and I guess I was more impressed with Broken Blade overall. I thought he was very impressive on the Cho'Gath, which was a surprise for me. Well, I'm going to take a couple more questions, guys, and then I'm going to start closing the stream. So thank you very much for tuning in for what was a nice 7-hour VOD review of this series. You think TL will 3-0 TSM? No. I think TSM are much better than that. But I again, marginal favorites TL based on what I reviewed and what I watched of TL FlyQuest. Do you think Urgot would have been better game 5 versus the Kindred over Ornn? As a blind pick? No. I think they wanted to engage. I think Sivir and Urgot is a weird duo, but if you're married to the Sivir, I think Sivir Ornn is probably the right way to go. It feels bad against the Braum, but like the Braum shield was important in some of those fights and not as much in others. Bloody went to school during game 1 and came back still reviewing. Yeah, Mr. Cullox, we just closed up the final game of the series.